In this segment, we're going to listen to the Douglas County Assessor explain what's happening for farmland value taxation in Douglas County and the discussion that takes place with there. And from a standpoint of it, it's interesting how it shows that many times government doesn't come up with their taxation to catch up to the prosperity a particular segment of our economy has until maybe even to the point where things may be going the other way. But it's an interesting discussion, especially for all taxpayers in Douglas County, but especially, I should say, the farmers in this area or people in Douglas County that have farmland someplace else in the state of Minnesota or in the Dakotas, that type of thing. Enjoy this presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Albertson.
Good morning.
Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, Gordon. Do you have the information in front of you that was sent out previously?
Tax market value?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it on this funny little thing with a screen.
I wasn't sure if somebody told you how to turn it on yet or not. So.
Got it figured out, I got it.
Where am I?
Some of us make hard copies.
I do too. It's so much easier.
It's not going?
Amen.
This is the one I'm going to start with. This is the one that says, actually it's got the heading Township Board Members, and I think you maybe got
Okay,
that.
yeah, I had that.
Page 30.
Noticing on the agenda that I have 15 minutes to teach you about the property tax system in Minnesota, Mr. Leifert has a half an hour to talk about parks, so I'm going to have to hurry.
Seems appropriate, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. It's much more difficult subject to understand.
Too much time on both parts.
I don't know that anybody's ever going to thoroughly learn that, in this group.
The heads, or the nuts and bolts of it is the tax statements and valuation notices are going out next week. Once that happens, the world gets a little busy for us and for the Auditor Treasurer's Office and others, and your phones start to ring. One of the things I wanted to make you aware is that the process of getting that tax statement out started back in 2011 because we used sales that happened in after October 2011 through September of 2012. Those sales are used to set the 2013 values, which are then used to set the 2014 taxes. It is a long process. People do not make that connection, and it's just over and over again, they don't make that connection. So this is going to be a kind of a primer of how that process works. Page number 1, upper corner there, explains the timing of when those sales occur. It explains the sales ratio process and what we did for the 2013 assessment to try to get our sales ratio where it needs to be. Page number 2, that's got the graph and the colors and the numbers on it. That shows where we started with the sales that had occurred in 2012. We color-coded how much percentage of tillable was on those to see if we could see a trend, and you can see obviously there is a trend. The ones that had the most tillable, we had the lowest ratios on.
Excuse me, say that again.
The parcels that had the most tillable, we had the lowest ratios on, which meant our values were lower on those than they were on ones that had less tillable on them.
Okay.
That indicates to us that we needed to raise tillable value. And you can see we started, what the state looks at is that median number, that midpoint of 76.12. That's the number that means everything to them. That's the number that we look at. Page 3, if you look on the far right column, those are those same sales ratio percentages lined up. The ones that are in yellow are the numbers that are in the eyes of the state the acceptable range, but that median, that midpoint, has to be at least 90. So we knew we had to make some fairly drastic changes. The changes that we made for the 2013 assessment and applied towards those sales are what gives us that column to the right where the midpoint is 93, 94%. That reflects the changes we made to get our values where they needed to be. So those are the numbers that were used to calculate the 2013 assessment for taxes payable 2014. It was a fairly steep increase. And again, the more tillable that was on a parcel, the higher the percentage of the increase. We saw some of that at the Truth and Taxation meeting back in December. I mean, mostly that was farmers there because they saw some pretty heavy increases. This is why. Now, we're going to flash forward to the next year. Page 4. After we had increased those values, we looked at the sales that happened again.
How do you turn it?
Routine review, yeah.
You put it on,
You're supposed to be able to do it on the thing, but that's fine.
You down right corner.
At any rate, the median there was 82.08%. That was after we increased the values in 2013.
Yep.
I'm just making sure everyone makes that connection. After the increase, looking at sales that happened the year after, we were back almost to where we were before. So, for the 2014 assessment, we have to get that 82% over 90%. Page 5, it gets busy. Page 5 gets really busy. The column to the far left is where we started. And again, we're at 82.8. We have to try to figure out a way to get to 90% or over 90% and make the assessment as good as we can. That's why you're seeing several different scenarios we ran trying to improve those numbers. Ultimately, what wound up happening, we were low on tillable again, so most of the increase is on tillable this year. We changed from crop equivalency rating to CPI, which is Crop Productivity Index. The University of Minnesota and others who were maintaining CERs stopped doing it.
Crop equivalency rating to,
CPI,
Okay.
Crop Productivity Index.
thank you.
That's become the new standard for using the soil survey to judge the quality of agricultural ground. It's maintained by the NRCS office, and it's used by anybody who measures or utilizes soil survey information at this point. If you look on auctions, or you hear about auctions, they talk about a farm with a 70, 80, 90% CPI. That's what they're looking at, that's what we're looking at. It's a method for us to use to try to balance out the poorer quality soils, tillables, with the better quality. At any rate, yes?
did all counties go to this now?
Not all counties have gotten to that point yet. We were using CERs for probably almost 25 years now.
Yeah.
Not all counties ever got to that point.
No, I was assessing in Polk County and they were still using A, B, and C. And so it's, you would think that, you know, across the state they would, or at least in counties with a lot of farmland in it, would make that switch.
A lot have and a lot haven't. It's difficult for a lot of smaller counties because it's a very intensive process to get to that stage. And again, we did a long time ago, and that helped. I would never want to be doing ABCs because it is so subjective and it was subject to argument.
Political.
Very much so. And after we had changed it to CERs all those years ago, our number of agricultural fields dropped significantly. And most people recognize a good field from a bad field, and the soil survey does. So, but I guess my point is that after having received an increase in value last year on agricultural land, which was pretty steep, the same thing is happening again this year. The average increase on tillable this year, and on the sheet I sent out, I said 15, and if we've got the numbers in now, it's over 19, is the average increase on tillable countywide.
19%?
That's the average increase countywide on tillable. That's not to say every parcel is going to go up 20%, but if you've got a parcel that's 100% tillable, it's going to go up at least 19.
And that's on top of what just was.
Exactly.
Excuse
And this is
me.
based on CPI?
This is based on sales and using the CPI to judge which ones went up how much. Now, the CPI and the CER were similar, but they're not identical. So it wasn't an exact change. There are some parcels that went up just based on that conversion, plus the fact we were using a higher number because we knew we were low in the first place. So again, the nuts and bolts of it is, after getting hit with a pretty steep increase last year, they're going to get hit with a pretty steep increase again this year.
Wow, usually the legislature, if they've had a group of people upset with their taxes, then they pick on another group, and they switch it all the time. This time they didn't switch.
That's,
But you're gonna get it again, because you said you did it forward, so next year it's gonna go up again.
yes, sir.
Same way, tillable will be
Yes.
the worst again.
Yeah. Now, and again, I'm raising values
Usually
now.
they pick
This
on
is going to
business.
affect taxes payable in 2015. And
The
that's
19% is the taxes payable in 14 though,
2015.
2015. Oh, okay.
1 year or year.
It's- Even after having raised it, and the taxes are going up this year, we're raising it again. Taxes on farmland in 2015 will go up. I can sit here today and tell you that without any hesitation because of what's happening here.
The percentage of last year then was what? Wasn't,
It wasn't that much. Again, it depended on the tillable, because if you had more tillable, the percentage was higher.
Right.
The modifier that we had went from 40 to 58, and that was a 45% increase on the modifier. Yes, sir.
If residential property has a rebound, that's going to have an effect on the taxes, the ag.
I was getting to that.
Okay.
The question is, why is it important to be raising these values as much as they are? Number one is this number of sales that we've been having on farmland have been going up significantly the last couple of years, and our sales ratio is supposed to be at least 90%. Our sales ratio on commercial, residential, and seasonal is over 90%. On the basis of how all property are supposed to be taxed equally, all property is supposed to be over that 90% threshold. Those properties haven't been changing that much. In fact, they've been pretty flat the last several years. So what happens is their portion of the pie that they get to pay shrinks somewhat, and the portion the ag has to pay enlarges. It's not, and I've been trying to get that point across, we're not trying to raise more dollars on the backs of farm properties, but we are obligated to have the values equal. If we're at over 90% of residential and seasonal and commercial, we've got to be over 90% in agricultural. The rate is less. You say that ag properties don't get as much services. The rate that they pay on that value is less than those other properties. But the value is still supposed to be over 90%.
But the rate, the ag rate, if you get over...
$1.5 million.
Right, and when the value of your tillable goes up that fast, you're going to throw a lot of farmers, because that number hasn't changed, right?
That number does change
How often?
every year. It's based actually on what values are doing. So for next year, that $1.5 million is supposed to go to $1.9 million.
Okay, so then at $1.9 million, they wouldn't throw them into that next category where all of a sudden you've got another 80 sitting out there that tripled in.
And that happens fairly regularly,
Yes.
that you look at how much all my other parcels went up, and then this one spikes way up, and it goes over that tier limit, yes.
Because the 80 would be 100% tillable.
Well,
There's tiers on the valuation. Once you get over $1.5 million in value, the rate per dollar of value, the tax doubles. And if you're, sitting at $1.4 million, and then suddenly your value goes up, that one parcel on the end goes from a 0.5% to 1% tax rate.
Yeah.
It's a convoluted system.
And the theory, but the theory is the tax is the same
We start out with the value, and the value is
in the county.
It's supposed to be treated the same, and
It's a
how the
shift,
tax rate
it's a
works.
shift of the weight
Yes.
on who's paying,
Yes.
yep,
residential, commercial, or agriculture.
it's the
And
same
back-
always.
Back in the glory days when everything was going up, Lakeshore was going up, residential going up, ag going up, everybody was going up about the same together. your value went up 10, 15%, your taxes stayed about the same.
Yeah.
Best of all worlds.
That would be the best of all, yeah.
We're in a scenario right now where the markets are not the same. I'd say the residential and the seasonal are coming back. We're not seeing as much foreclosure activity as we had. I think in the future, we're going to see, some increases there. It's just, this on the ag is very dramatic. A glimpse into the crystal ball in the future, looking at the sales that have happened so far and on the ag parcels, they're coming in about 97%. So if that holds true, next year we won't be looking at the increase in the value. We'll still be looking at an increase in the tax in 2015. But if the sales hold true, then we'll have a pause there. Possibly if that doesn't change, then the ag market and the residential starts to change, it'll start shifting back. Again, everything's a pendulum. It goes back and forth regularly. So it's, the heads up is that it's going to be, next week when those notices are mailed, it's going to be hectic because they're going to be getting hit with a second year of something that they thought was over last year.
Same people.
Same people.
When the market value of farmland goes up, tillable acres goes up, what percentage of an increase does that, when you look at the whole county total market value and you just kick up the farmland by, well, you kick the farmland up by 19%, something like that.
How does it balance out?
Yes, how much does that increase the market value over everything else? I mean, is it, how many $1 million increase in market value do you have just from tillable acres?
Just in tillable acres. You had to ask me a question I didn't anticipate. That I do not know.
I mean, is it a percentage?
19%.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
The total county value increase on ag worked out to about 10.5. So when you balance out all the ag parcels with the non-tillable, with the buildings and everything else, it went up about 10.5%. That's the average. Worst thing about averages are that only means it's the middle.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be on one side or the other. If you've got a lot of tillable, no buildings, it's going to be better than double that.
All right.
If you got a piece that's got no tillable on it, it's not going to go up at all, value-wise. So I don't like throwing out averages, but you got to know that it's going to be the fellows who've got a lot of farm ground, and there's a lot of people actively pursuing the farm ground the last couple of years, they're going to be getting hammered pretty hard.
Sales have slowed down though in last fall.
Yeah, well, sort of.
$4 corn will do that.
But we still got some sales over $5,000 an acre after that. We had some before that. But
That's another spank 'em again.
the range that we're going to have for our tillable, and if you look at the total dollar, if you divide it by the acres afterwards, I don't think we're sitting that bad. It's the increase that's going to hurt. Our range right now on tillable is from 2,000 to 4,600 an acre. That's not a bad range. But it's going to be a lot higher than it was before, and that's going to be the part that grinds.
And how, there's getting to be a lot more irrigation, where land that was a little light, we thought light and scrappy, is now producing 200 bushel corn with an irrigator on it.
Hudson Township is a prime example of that, yeah.
Yep. So do we have an irrigator factor on that? Or
We're
is-
adding $500 per acre,
Yeah.
per irrigated acre. Did that last year.
One of my guys took it out.
And got myself chewed on that one as well. But I think we're being conservative with that.
Mr. Belkey.
There's the argument that it's a management issue, it's not a land issue.
It was raising his
But
crops. He was doing
we have had sales of irrigated land without the equipment that we were way low on
Yeah,
as well.
it's
So it tells me the fact that it is irrigable adds value to the property.
Okay.
This has a flashback part of it where at one time we had issues with people that own lake property didn't ever plan on selling it, and suddenly the neighbors sold theirs for millions of dollars, and their property value went up, and we're taxing them out of their property. They couldn't afford to live there. Are we going to get to that point where Family Farm X never had an inkling of ever selling that property? Now they're getting taxed at a rate of which they're going to end up having to sell it because the same scenario all over again.
Raise a good point, but the same thing could be said of anybody with a residential property, or commercial property, or lake property. They never plan on selling it. Why should it be valued and taxed that way?
That's not applicable.
That's how the system works.
Yeah.
The value is the value.
Charlie,
The
is it-
lakeshore part of it, we're dealing with now with green acres. If you qualify for green acres, that value is out there, but you don't pay taxes on it until it is sold for development. That's when they pay back on that. If they don't develop it, they keep farming it, they're not paying on that.
Okay, same scenario. There is a fallback.
There is a fallback if it's agricultural. But on ag properties, when you have an ag property selling for $4,000 to $5,000 an acre for the tillable, that's not something you defer. That's what the value of the ag property is. And I'm obligated to say that that's what the value it is. That's what we put on it. The same if it's on the lake, the same if it's a commercial, the same if it's a house in town.
Charlie, you want to say something? Oh, I thought you were just...
He's absorbing.
Well, it was the
He's
same people that were at the meeting here in last fall.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were third and fourth generation, 100-year farms.
Sure.
They are the ones, and they will still be back with the same, and that's without a doubt because of the change.
You got two segments
They're not
there.
looking
You've
to
got
sell.
the younger guys out buying the farms, and you've got the older guys that are renting, that aren't necessarily seeing the benefit of that added crop unless they're getting more rent as a part of that.
Yeah.
But those guys who are retired and they're renting it out, they're feeling the pinch because their taxes are going up, and they're maybe getting the same rent, and the guy farming it's getting the profit from all
Oh,
that.
they aren't getting the same rent.
If they're working,
They are not.
if they're working it right. At any rate, that's the heads up. That's going to be happening next week. And certainly, if you've got follow-up questions, please talk to me. The second part that I sent out that's got those little yellow highlights on it, that was the example of how we don't raise values to raise more tax dollars. It explains the process of the levy, the total value, dividing the two to get a rate. It's, if the levy is less, the rate turns out to be less. If the total values are down, but the levy is up, the rate winds up being more. It just explains the difference between, and explains the difference between the classifications. We put the example of a $200,000 property in there just to see what the taxes do for the very same property with the same value. There's a very dramatic difference in the tax rates in Minnesota depending on what kind of property it is. I'm not going to try and go through that with you because that gets fairly intensive, but this one is Douglas County. It's the numbers here are Douglas County numbers. Shelley, my office, put this together, did an excellent job.
Thank
We
you.
have it available for the public to take a look at and try to figure it out. Again, it's not easy to explain Minnesota's tax system.
So we shouldn't blame the raise in taxes or the raise in the levy, we shouldn't blame that on the assessor anymore?
The assessor has taken the heat since biblical times when Zacchaeus was in a tree. I don't see that anything I'm going to do is going to change that.
You see how great he's
Beals
getting? He's
tried to
only
explain
20. Thank you so much, Keith.
Yes.
And thank you for your letter to the editor thing, commentary. I wish they didn't limit the number of words,
It
but,
was supposed to be
That's
going to
okay.
the township officers tomorrow. Of course, that got moved
right.
Friday a week, and it's supposed to be an open line next Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
Good, so when are the notices going out?
Notices should be going out about next Wednesday.
So the notices will be out before the township guys come in.
Yeah, it wasn't planned that way. I'd much rather have a more happy crowd than what I'm going to wind up having on Friday the 4th.
Well, you do have open line before they hit.
That was planned that way too.
You and Shar are going on the 25th.
Correct.
Then are you also planning to sometime during April just for your office or not, Keith? That's
Haven't got
okay.
that far, it's just a matter of getting through board's review and everything else
Yeah.
to see how the schedule works out, because for a while in there, we have nothing else but dealing with all the things going on as
Sure.
result of notices.
No problem, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Gentlemen from Public Works. Pardon me?
Sidley, sorry about parks.
Right.
Well, it must be a good one to take.
Over, it just,
It is a titillating.
see how I can follow that.
Thanks, Keith.